What is going on, everyone? This is Miles with Windows Central Gaming, and welcome to the 83rd episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined by the award-winning reporter of IGN, Rebekah Valentine. Rebekah, how are you doing on this fine Saturday?
I'm great. It is morning on a Saturday. I've got coffee. I'm going to go see a movie later. It's a good day.
What movie are you seeing?
I'm going to the Alamo. I'm going to see Akira tonight.
Oh,
The classic anime bike slide film.
if people aren't familiar, the Alamo Drafthouse is an institution. It's an amazing place where you can sit down, have beers, eat food, watch some movies. They really cater to movie nerds. They have custom trailers for every single movie that you go see. If you have an opportunity to go to one, definitely go. It's a really cool experience.
They show a lot of classic stuff. Like they don't just show the whatever's new. They go back and they have like nights. Like they're doing like a spooky Halloween month or whatever most of them do. But yeah, it's really good if you just want to go see a movie but don't like anything that's currently playing. You can usually dig up something weird or interesting from the past.
Yeah.
This is not an Alamo commercial.
This is an Alamo commercial. Well, we have an awesome show lined up. It's been a busy week. There's a lot of stuff we're going to be diving into. We're going to be talking about the Silent Hill Extravaganza, Resident Evil's upcoming content. We're going to be talking about the CMA turning to the public, some current gen frame rate concerns, and so much more. But before we get into all of that, Rebekah, this is your first time on Xbox Chaturdays, and I am stoked to have you with me. But a little initiation that we do for everyone. Okay. Let everyone here know who you are, where they can find you, and most importantly, why you love gaming.
Oh, man. Well, I'm Rebekah, or Reb Valentine. Either's fine. I'm a reporter with IGN. Been there for almost 2 years. Before that, I was doing business reporting over at gamesindustry.biz. So a lot of investigative journalism, not a lot of business reporting. You can find me on Twitter at Duck Valentine, and you can find me at IGN. Hold on. I always have to do this because it's like not the URL. It's ign.com/person/Duck Valentine. I have to think about
this is a person.
Person. I'm a person. Oh, wow. I don't know. Why do I love games? This has broken my brain. I don't know. I just do. I don't know. They make me feel joy. I like games that make me feel joy and that I can find different kinds of creative expressions through. I like them as an art, I guess. I like them in the same way that I like reading books or going to see a lovely show. They just sort of round out my lovely world of hobbies, and then I get the added excitement of talking to people who make them and learning the story of how they're made. And there's such wonderful, intricate little puzzle boxes that are not like any other piece of art. You get to interact with them. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. That's, I think, one of the main reasons so many of us connect with gaming is because it delivers experiences that just can't be done in other mediums. A lot of us love movies. A lot of us love music, especially. And those for a long time, those were the traditional forms of entertainment. And then we have that experience. For me, it was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and playing that and realizing what a video game could be. Like the fact that I get to interact with this big open world and experience this and control the narrative. Moments like that, I think, are the main reason so many of us love gaming. And it's always fun to hear where people started. And is there a game for you that got you hooked? Is there any particular game you can point to and say, this is the game that made me say, all right, I'm in. Gaming, wherever you're going moving forward, I'm there.
So, I guess there's two. When I was a kid, the game that made me think, oh yeah, this is fun, I want to play more games, was when I got Pokemon Gold and Silver for like my 10th birthday or whatever it was with a Game Boy Color. And I played hours of that and I had so much fun. And I was still at an age where like playing pretend was acceptable. So I'd play Pokemon and then I'd go with my friends. We'd run around the playground and play Pokemon right after that. So that was like the initiation. But I like a lot more recently. I think the thing that sort of got me over the hurdle from, yeah, video games are fun too, oh, I freaking love this, was Undertale, actually. Because
nice.
I had, I went to school for English and philosophy. And so I was reading like all these great works and, thinking thinking that I was thinking deep thoughts and all these other things, and examining art forms and critical whatever. And I played Undertale, and it was the first time I had played a game that I felt genuinely engaged with the idea of video games as a medium. Like, if that makes sense, like a game that was fun but also emotional and heartfelt, but then also actively making me think about how video games worked and how they could subvert their own tropes and have dialogue with one another and what it means to be a video game. And it like broke me. I was like, oh, we're doing this then. This is just like the feeling that I got reading House of Leaves in English class and like American Lit 2 with 10 other English majors. Like, oh, this rules. I love this. And so now I've just been chasing the high of that ever since. Got a little bit of it this year with Immortality, actually. Immortality got me there again. I was like, this is a video game that could not be anything else.
I need to play Immortality. I've heard so many people
do.
rave about the experience and just how it commits to this idea, this abstract, weird ass,
Yes.
unrelentlessly weird experience. And those are the things I'm here for.
I also believe that the best experience of Immortality is incidentally on the Xbox with an Xbox controller. So just that idea in your brain.
I think it's still in Game Pass as well. So I need to take some time. My slate right now is so stacked with so many games that I've played for like 2 hours and haven't finished that I'm trying to chip away at some of those, but I need to take some time for that. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Beautiful to hear that. We have a lot to dive into today. A huge shout out to all the amazing people who join us live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com/Windows Central Gaming, and the awesome folks who listen to the audio versions on their favorite podcast services. Some quick housekeeping. As I mentioned, the start time has been shifted by 1 hour, so now we are live at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are digging the audio versions of the show, leave us a review. Helps feed that old algorithm there. And we're going to get to one super chat before we dive into our first topic from Nick W., who says, have you played Persona 5 Royal on Game Pass? It's a fantastic game. Have not played Persona 5 Royal on Game Pass yet. Reb, have you played Persona 5 in general?
No, I've not. So I've never played a Persona game, but all of my friends are Persona sickos, and I know I would like it. I see it. It's the thing that gets me is when it goes into battle and the menu goes blammo, like the
just that comic explosion,
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, that's good. I like that. I know I would love these games. They are like 500 hours long. That's an exaggeration, but they're really long. I don't have that kind of time. And every time I look at it and think, oh, I'd really love this, that's the thing that stops me. And it's on Game Pass now. It's on, really? I wouldn't have to pay $60 to $70. I guess it's $60. I wouldn't have to pay $60 to play 20 hours of it and then decide it's too much and quit. Maybe. I wonder how long it stays on there. Maybe over the holidays.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be probably at least a full year. But I'm in the same camp. I have a bunch of Persona sickos just hitting me up saying, why haven't you played Persona? Dude, Persona 5 is the greatest video game of all time. Why haven't you played it? And I'm like, all right, let me dive in. How long is it? And they're like, I played for 200 hours. I'm like, how long is it? How long is it to beat this game? And they're like, 100 hours. I'm like, 100 hours for the main storyline?
So many hours.
I complain about it, but then I'll play 100 hours of something nonsensical that I beat in 20 hours and then just spend 80 hours playing beyond it. So...
Right. I've wasted at least 10 hours just this week playing Stardew Valley. I have beaten that game so many times.
That's like... People are like, oh, you can play Persona 5. You can play all these great games, these critically acclaimed games. Right now, I'm just playing Dragon Ball The Breakers because it's... Like, I don't know. It's just...
The heart wants what the heart wants.
Exactly. All right, so first topic. I know this is an Xbox podcast, but last week we were questioned about the Bayonetta 3 voice actor situation. So wanted to touch on that, wanted to provide some updates because we touched on this pretty much as it was breaking the day that Helena came out and essentially said that she was offered $4,000, a flat rate of $4,000 to reprise her role in Bayonetta 3. And so she was calling for the community to basically boycott the game. She was publicly making claims against Platinum Games and her compensation for this title. Listed her legacy, her history, her experience, all of that great stuff. Obviously, a lot of people saw that. When you see a story like that, you want to side with the individual. You want to champion the people behind the scenes. That's, I'm forever an optimist. And, I want to assume the best of people. And so we touched on it last week. Obviously, made sure to be careful to state, like, if this is true, because, again, this was breaking at the time. We didn't have all of the information. We've gotten some more information this week that I think is really important to touch on. And so Jason Schreier of Bloomberg was able to get some sources, and he put out a report that basically stated that Platinum Games offered a bit more than what Helena was suggesting. At least that is what they are claiming. They are claiming that they offered her $4,000 per session for 4 to 5 sessions, which is dramatically more than she was paid for her role in Bayonetta 2. They were also claiming that she was looking for 6 figures, royalties, a bunch of other things in this. And so Jason Schreier said that he had documentation that showed that this contract exists. It is real. Helena responded saying that is an absolute lie, countering that as well. So it's a messy, ugly situation, as these things always are. So what is your read currently on this situation? Now that we've had Helena's initial response, Platinum Games' counter, and then Helena's counter, do you think we'll ever get an answer to this mystery?
No. This is so complicated. I will say, look, I weighed in on this on Twitter, and there were a lot of like kind of weirdos in my mentions who were sort of like awkwardly accusing Jason Schreier of just regurgitating a Platinum Games statement or something, which, one, I know Bloomberg's behind a paywall, but if you didn't get to read the whole report, then maybe don't comment on what you think he did. And two, that's not how investigative journalism works, people. Like, I do not know what he saw. I assume he saw the contract and was able to verify it, but there's other pieces of documentation that could conceivably have stood in there. I can't speak to what he saw. But like, having done journalism like this before, you need to be real. Can I cuss on this podcast?
I try to keep PG-13, yeah.
You gotta be really darn sure. Really dang nabbity sure that this stuff is right. And there are resources you can use as a journalist to make real dang nabbity sure that that's the stuff you have is accurate, that maybe your average Twitter commenter either does not have access to or knowledge of. Like, you can lose your job and your entire career if you screw this kind of stuff up, because it is really easy. It would be very easy to prove him wrong.
Yes.
The NDA has already broken. Like, Bayonetta's voice actor has already broken her NDA. If he was absolutely wrong, she could easily post the contract they offered her and be like, haha, fool, you were wrong. And there's
Checkmate,
the problem.
Jason.
Right. And there's other things too. So I am inclined to believe Schreier's report because it's good reporting and he has a track record of incredibly good reporting. And when you read the article, it's clear he didn't email Platinum and then they said, no, this is false, and then he wrote this. Like, that's not how this works. He talked to anonymous sources. I don't think Platinum would have been happy to know that they talked to him in the first place. That said, it's probably not I think even Jason would tell you this is not 1000% of the entire story. I still think that even with the numbers he gave, voice actors are not paid particularly well, particularly in star roles like Bayonetta's, particularly when there is a bunch of merchandise and she's in Smash Brothers and in all these other places, and these places that are potentially making quite a bit of money. The Bayonetta games themselves, I don't think make nearly as much money as she said they did. I'm actually not really sure. She said something like 450,000 or 450 million.
Yeah, I don't know where that figure came from.
It's a really big number.
Unless it's combining all the merch and all the other stuff we were talking about. I don't
know where she would get those numbers. It was a really big number. It was an absurdly big. Oh, she said without merch, I think too. It's a very made up number. So like, but at the same time, like, people deserve to be paid well and fairly for their work, and voice actors, especially in the video game industry, are incredibly underpaid. And I think the biggest harm that this whole thing has done is, like, at first it seemed like we were maybe going to have a conversation about that, like,
just,
really
hey, I'm paid horribly for a starring role.
Yeah, and then we started having, like, some of the Breath of the Wild voice actors, or one of them weighed in and was like, yeah, actually, we were paid, like, not very well either. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, this is really sad, but it also seems like we're maybe going to have a conversation about this, and maybe we can, like, move the needle a little bit. Great. And then it turned out that, like, she seems to have been lying at least about some part of her story. And that sucks, because that is just, like, undermined the whole thing. And now it feels just like a weird poisoned well, where if someone, tries to come up tomorrow and say, hey, I was, like, criminally underpaid for this role, this other big role, and they're telling the truth, then everybody's just immediately going to be deeply skeptical of it. So yeah, it's just a really, like, messy mess. And I also, side note, Platinum Games, I feel like a lot of things about this. Platinum Games letting Jennifer Hale come out and make basically Platinum Games stepping out of all this, letting things get to the point where Jennifer Hale felt she had to make a statement to protect herself because she was getting so much harassment, and then Platinum Games just going, yeah, whatever she said. Come on, guys. This is your problem. You solve this. Don't put this on Jennifer Hale. She's just doing a job.
Yeah, that was such a weird state. Like, Jennifer Hale, like, basically saying, I have an NDA, so I can't say much. Like, basically alluding to the fact that this isn't the whole story kind of thing and moving on. And then Platinum Games is like, yes, we stand by Jennifer Hale and what she said. And it's like, she didn't say anything because there's an NDA. What do you... She
shouldn't have had to say anything.
Yeah,
like, this should have been your job, Platinum Games.
Like, it got to the point where I was wondering if Nintendo was going to have to step in and, like, address it. Obviously, they didn't, and usually they don't, even if people are dying in the streets. Nintendo is not one to comment if they don't have to. But that whole situation was so ugly. And like you said, the biggest bummer for me as it currently stands is that we were having some conversations about compensation, and there are absolutely situations where individuals are kind of exploited for their passions in the industry in one way or another. And now this whole situation has this ugly shroud of well, she lied. So how can I trust anyone now? How can I trust any of these conversations moving forward? Because she apparently lied about this. And again, I think we're all human at the end of the day. We all exaggerate. We all feel certain ways, and the way that we feel can maybe amplify the reality of the situation a little bit here. Again, even with this update, I don't think we have the full picture of what was really happening behind the scenes. And I don't know if we'll ever get that unless it's going to court. And then maybe, but I don't know if it's going to get to that situation or that level. But yeah, just wanted to address that and update everyone, because we did touch on it last week when we didn't really have any information. So there is more information. I'm curious to see if there will be even further information. But for now, it's just a hot mess. Just some it's the Johnny Depp Amber Heard back and forth all over again, but for games. That's what it reminds you of, and it bums me out because
bad.
It's bad. It's bad. All right, Assassin with a super chat related to this last topic asks, "This really makes me wonder how much money Steve Downes and Christopher Judge were paid for Master Chief and Kratos, respectively." Yeah, those are interesting questions. Have we ever had a starring person come out and say what they were paid? Can they even with NDAs?
I would have to Google with my incredibly loud mechanical keyboard, because I feel like the answer to that is probably yes, but
somebody had to, right? Or there has to be some record of what they were paid, but
I mean, I did notice when I was like looking into the Bayonetta situation that there have been some articles about like SAG voice strikes and things like that, and like some talking around what voice actors are paid. But I haven't seen a whole lot of like comprehensive reporting on the subject in the game space. And so now I'm like, okay, is this a gap we need to fill? I don't know.
I mean, on the Hollywood side, we constantly hear X guy was paid $50 million to reprise his role, or X guy got a $500 million contract for 10 movies. We hear about that constantly in Hollywood. The lead actors, we know what they make. We know exactly what they make constantly. And on the video game space, it almost feels like a dirty conversation to have.
Yeah, I learned actually in the course of this Bayonetta thing, my partner told me this story. I have not like vetted this. Please don't. If this is like slightly inaccurate, please don't come to my house with pitchforks. I was told this story of apparently the voice Nathan Lane, and then the voice actor for Pumbaa, Timon and Pumbaa, the Lion King. So they sing Hakuna Matata, right? That's like a 1-second snippet of that song is used in Toy Story at one point, and apparently whoever was in charge of that forgot to get their permission, and so when they saw Toy Story, they were like, "Hey, what the hell?" And like, however they ended up sorting that out, they have since gotten like tons of residuals just for that 1 second of that song being used in Toy Story. So yeah, you're right. Like, we talk about this stuff in movies all the time. I mean, the movie industry generally seems to have, I mean, maybe not perfectly figured out its labor practices, but it certainly has a better labor conversation going on than the games industry does right now.
Yeah, because I guess the games,
unions.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're making some progress now that gaming is bigger than the film industry in terms of the amount of money that's being made. It is unfortunate that we aren't having those conversations more frequently. So at the end of all of this, I hope it at least keeps those conversations going, regardless of the 100% truth. Even if she was paid, let's say the high end of this, 20,000 ish.
Right.
Still, for a main character in a franchise that Nintendo has aligned its entire brand with. Bayonetta is a Nintendo core IP now, regardless of how much it sells, because I don't think they sell exceptionally well. If a game is selling a few million copies, I think you can still say that 20,000 maybe isn't ideal.
Yeah, no, you can do better.
But you can do better.
You can do better.
All right, moving on to some Xbox-related topics. Xbox DVR. It's been a complaint. It's been a huge complaint for people who use the Xbox console constantly because it's been bad. There's no other way to put it. It's been inconsistent. It's been choppy. I couldn't upload clips to OneDrive or upload clips to Twitter consistently. I can't even trim clips consistently on the Xbox console. This isn't a new thing. This has been a problem for years and years. And we've heard Microsoft time and time again come out and say, oh, all right, it's a priority. We're working on it. We're trying to adjust it, But people are we're sick of hearing that. And now this week, we got some news in that camp that paints an optimistic change to Xbox Game DVR. Not only have they improved performance for Alpha Ring insiders, they have also rolled out a new app called Captures that is supposed to be a little more streamlined and consistent than the previous app. So I haven't had a chance to really mess around with this too much. I am part of the Alpha Ring, so I did notice the UI was different. I haven't tried trimming any clips yet. I haven't tried uploading any clips yet. I will be putting this through the ringer because it's just a constant issue for me. But it is nice to know that this is something that Microsoft is actively working on. And we know Microsoft right now is trying to build up its platform to be, quote unquote, the best place to play. That's, they're trying to do everything for everyone. So I got to ask the people watching, and I got to ask you, as we look towards the future of Xbox, what are some missing features or some features that don't exist right now that you would like to see on the Xbox platform?
Oh, I'm a real simple girl. I just turn it on and I play my games. Actually, I currently feel I didn't even know this was a problem. I record clips and put them on Twitter, and that's like the extent of my engagement with this feature, and it's always worked fine for me. And so this is I find myself I'm very not this is not to stoke console stuff. I'm not as much of a PlayStation person. We do have a PS5. I try to use the screen share button on that, and it's like 2 extra buttons there.
Do I hold it? Do I double push it? Do I tap it?
And it drives me up the wall because it's so easy on Switch and Xbox. But yeah, I don't know. I consistently find with Xbox that it has the stuff that the other two don't, or the thing that I specifically want. The other one the other day was the quick resume thing. It's so good. None of the other two consoles that I have the same kind of quick resume thing where I can just have like 3 or 4 games paused and out in the menu, and I can just go back into them. And I use Xbox so much that I forget that other consoles don't have that, and that has caused me to have to redo boss battles in Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS5.
Just like close the game, open something else out.
I backed out of it, opened something else. It doesn't prompt you. It doesn't give you a message that goes, "Hey, you got Final Fantasy VII running. Are you sure you want to do this?" It just lets me do it, and then I go back to Final Fantasy VII, and hey, what's going on? Yeah, I don't know. I think this is not really a straight up answer to your question. It's not really a feature so much as the home menu annoys me. There's so much. It's very busy and disorganized right now, it feels like. I don't know. Maybe I can customize it. That's not something I have engaged with very much, but there's just so much going on the home menu. It feels completely, I just want like my games there. I don't need all this. I don't need like 20 layers of Xbox Game Pass recommendations or sales or whatever is going on in there. If I could have just a nice clean home menu, that's something I want. But yeah, I'm very simple. Just want to play the games.
I think a lot of people would really agree with you on the dashboard front. That has been, for the people immersed in the little Xbox bubble, you see concepts online constantly from artists who say, Xbox, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Why is it so busy? Why are there so many ads? Why are the tiles so massive? You have these cool dynamic backgrounds with little subtle animations, but then 50% of it is just stacked with bricks and you can't even see it. So a lot of people are totally on board. I agree. Even if it is just as simple as being able to customize it. Because to your point, you can't currently customize it.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't just miss that, because sometimes I just miss these things.
Just let me shrink the tile size. I think even that, if I could just shrink the tiles on the main screen, so even if they're just blasted with ads constantly, I can just shrink them down. So I have like a little micro, just spam bar of ads in the bottom.
Or
Even if
have
I could
some
do that.
distinguishment between the stuff, between like the list of games that I own and the list of games that I do not own that it's trying to sell to me. Because right now I just see a bunch of squares and I'm like, which one is it?
But that's how they want to get you. They want you to click on that and be like, oh, I need to buy this right now.
No.
No.
It's on Game Pass. I'm not buying anything.
Yeah, so overall, I think Xbox has done a lot to improve the platform. Like you said, I think they do most everything that a player would want. There are some features on PlayStation that I really like. They are very situational, very specific to a type of player and an audience. But one of the coolest things about the PS5, in my opinion, is that when you are in a voice chat, when you're in a party chat, you can do screen share. And I think that is such a subtle, cool little thing.
Yeah, that's nice.
When we were playing Demon's Souls, some friends and I had a friend ask, oh, did you find this armor in this area? And I'm like, no. And so instead of him trying to say, all right, well, take a right at this corridor, take a left at this corridor, look for the second torch in the wall, he just screen shared and we just walked together. Like I had his screen and we just walked through it together. And that was such a cool feature that I didn't even know I wanted. And those are the things that I get really excited about, those weird little things that I didn't even know I wanted that somebody took the time to bring to me. I know a lot of Xbox people also miss Snap, which was a really cool feature where you could snap a side, either video or browser on the side of the screen while you were playing a game. And stuff like that, I think is cool. And I hope we see a little more innovation there because compared to last generation, it just feels very safe. And that's fine. It works. Yeah. It gets the job done. Like you said, you can go in, you can play your games. And that's what 90% of us are doing every time we use the console. So in that sense, it's a success. But it would be cool to see a little more innovation there.
Oh, wait, I do have one. This is even an Xbox feature. Let me put game download codes into the Xbox app on my phone and then let me download them. Because I can, the setup's already there. I can put in a code on my Xbox or I can open like my browser and do it. But if I'm on my phone, I have the Xbox app. I don't think there's anywhere, if I have a download code, I can't put a code in anywhere. And so like I can download games from if I can buy a game from the store on my app and then download it to my Xbox remotely. But if a company has sent me a code or if I've gotten a code from somewhere, I have to actually open the browser and like log in on live or whatever and then like put the code in and then reopen the app, find it in my store and then download it. It's really weird.
Bring back the QR codes, you know? I remember when Xbox One launched with the Kinect and you would get your game codes in the box. And it would be just a QR code that you would hold up to the Kinect to scan, and that's how you would redeem it. But I agree. That's little things that could go a long way. All right. It's been a big week for horror. It's been a huge week for horror games. We've had Silent Hill and Resident Evil, both with big showcases this week. We are going to start with the Resident Evil showcase. Capcom is on a just outrageous hot streak right now. Everything that they have done in the past several years across all of their franchises has hit in ways it's never hit before. From Monster Hunter to Devil May Cry to Resident Evil, Capcom has somehow figured out how to reinvigorate all of its core franchises. And as we look to the past success of Capcom, a lot of that I think started with Resident Evil 7. And since then, since Resident Evil 7 became a hit, Capcom has just said, all right, Resident Evil, that is something that we're going to do pretty much every single year. We're going to find a way to give you Resident Evil constantly, and so far they've been able to keep that consistent. So we got a showcase this week that detailed Re:Verse, an update to Resident Evil Village, and some juicy gameplay for the highly anticipated remake of Resident Evil 4. So, are you a big Resident Evil 4 fan? I
have exactly 2 Resident Evil experiences.
Oh, let's hear them.
One of them was when I was like 12, 13 or so. I believe my parents did not understand video games, and I asked for GameCube games for my birthday one year. And I did not give any context because I was a child. And they, who did not know anything about video games, bought me Resident Evil. I believe it was 0. Help me, Resident Evil fans, because there was a character on the box named Rebekah.
Oh yes.
That was
Yeah.
the reason why. And I am like 12 or 13 and a little scaredy cat, and I play the first couple minutes of that game, and there's a moment where like a scary dog like crashes through the window of a train that this woman is exploring. Nope, turn it off, never play that again. I played Resident Evil 4 actually, so years later, in college, or slightly after maybe. Some friends were doing a marathon stream. I'm not a horror game person very much at all. It's growing on me. I'm inching my way there. And some friends thought it would be funny if, for like a donation incentive, the donation incentive was Reb will play a scary game. And so I signed up for this. Of course, I knew what I was doing. They thought it'd be funny. And so they picked the scary game. I didn't know what it was. And I sat down, and it's the famous sequence from Resident Evil 4, like the sequence in the village where he's going around and all the villagers are like, meh. The bit that everybody knows from Resident Evil 4. And I was not scared. I was infuriated. It was a great stream because all these guys are coming at me and I'm just trying to get through. I'm just like yelling and shooting these guys and screaming the whole time. It was very entertaining. I had a great time. And I feel like from that sequence alone, maybe I would really like Resident Evil 4. Would I?
I think Resident Evil 4, it was that, for a lot of people, it is the perfect balance between the horror roots of Resident Evil and then just over-the-top Michael Bay style action, where there's just sequences that are so outrageous and so dumb. Like, it introduced a roundhouse kick for the protagonist, where you shoot them in the knee and then you do a spinning roundhouse kick. And it's like, what? That wasn't in Resident Evil before.
Someone told me there's like a scene in the original where, and that I suppose they must have maintained in this, where he says, "I'll see myself out," and then jumps out the window. It's just the dumbest thing I've
The one-liners.
Is that real?
It's real. It's real. I replayed this game probably about 6 months ago. It's a game I've beaten 4 or 5 times at least. Because I bought it on GameCube, bought it on PS2, bought it on Wii, bought it on 360, bought it on Xbox One. So I've bought that game more times than I care to admit. But it's just cheese. It's quintessential cheese. Like that particular line that you mentioned. Leon confronts one of the main villains who's trying to convince him that he needs to surrender and leave this place. And he just turns around and says, "No thanks, bro." It's just, it's so good because
that's great.
Wasn't afraid to be dumb, still kept the Resident Evil cheese, but just elevated everything else about it. And so that's why it's so revered. And that's why I think some people had concerns about the tone of Resident Evil 4 because they assumed that maybe this direction would make it grim and dark,
too serious,
and it wouldn't be cheesy, it wouldn't have campy one-liners. And then we get this new gameplay trailer, and there was one scene where I just laughed out loud so hard to myself because I couldn't believe it. That infamous village scene that you talked about, they show that in this. And so he's being chased by all the monsters. He's running around. He runs behind a barn that has a cow in it, and there is a flame lantern hanging on the ceiling. Leon shoots the lantern down, sets the cow on fire. The cow is on fire, plowing through enemies. He turns a corner and then says, "Bill me for the repairs." And that's the moment where I said, okay,
what a dork.
What it's exactly, dude, you literally set a cow on fire and killed it. And just a gruesome, horrific murder of a cow, and you're like, "Bill me for the repairs." And it's just that
he
shows.
Also like parries a chainsaw with a gun in the remake. I saw that in a clip. That's cool.
Yeah. So again, it shows that they are making it darker. They are not afraid to embrace the horror roots, but also this is Resident Evil 4. Yeah. And Resident Evil 4, I love it because of just. It's considered one of the greatest games of all time, but as someone who just replayed the original, it also has some of the dumbest moments of all time in any video game. Like the Mr. Kennedy arc, it's just unbelievable.
There's a whole genre of horror film that is just like campy on purpose, and like great that this leaned into that.
So great to see that. Great to see some extended gameplay, and most importantly, this just looks incredible from a visual perspective, from a gameplay perspective. This looks amazing, and it's so cool to see Capcom just doing their thing. They found a stride in a way that a lot of other big publishers haven't. And so, I know you haven't really played through Resident Evil 4, but as we look to the quality of what Capcom has done with remakes. Is there a particular game you want to see remade that's on the same caliber as this?
Oh, does it have to be a Capcom game?
Oh no, just generally speaking.
Oh man, what do I want to see remade? I'm gonna venture into the world of RPGs. I would love a remake of Skies of Arcadia
Oh, okay.
that is like nice. Bring it keep find some way to meld like turn-based gameplay with sort of the more actiony stuff that we've seen in RPGs more recently, like the kind of Tales style stuff, and it just give me like this really beautiful world and let me fly around this big open sky and do air pirate stuff. I would love that.
That is such a
Is that a
JRPGs
weird deep cut?
it's a deep cut, but I'm here for it. One of my favorite RPGs of all time is Legend of Mana. And that's a game that either nobody has played or people have their criticisms of. But to me, that era of JRPGs where they weren't afraid to try new ideas and be weird, and
Yeah,
that's something that
love a
I've
weird
always
RPG.
loved about the genre is they're weird. They're so unabashedly weird. And I love that. And for a period of time, it just felt like everyone saw Final Fantasy VII and everyone saw these games that did well, and everybody was just trying to do that. Like, that's what works. We're just going to do that. So, yeah, Skies of Arcadia, bring it back. Give that. Again, I'm not in control of finances, and maybe it's for the best because I would greenlight those kinds of remakes in a heartbeat. Yeah, you want to do Skies of Arcadia, like Final Fantasy VII remake level? Let's go. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I'll also say I think this looks great. This is no shade to Resident Evil 4. I'm generally like a little more cynical on just the concept of remakes. I wish we weren't spending piles of money on as many of them as we are. It's kind of unnecessary. I wish we were spending that money on making new, interesting things and trying new ideas and being like a little more innovative and a little more adventurous. The game that shook me out of that stupor a little bit was Final Fantasy VII Remake specifically. I will talk about this on every podcast that lets me. I have never. It's going back to that thing about like games doing the art thing again, which is like an old debate. But Final Fantasy VII Remake grapples with the idea of a remake as a remake. And like, what does it actually mean to remake a game, and who are we doing this for, and why are we even doing it in the first place? That rules.
Yeah.
Metatextual examination of the very nature of a remake is cool. I am here for that. Everyone else go home.
Because the core of Final Fantasy VII was basically deconstructing capitalism and identifying like how that damages all of us and the impacts that it has. And so it's really cool that they're able to bring that back in and tie it into the fact that are you making this game because you want to tell the story, or are you making this game because you want to make money? And that's
right.
Really, again, not to be cynical, but when I look at things like the Dead Space remake, even though I hear it's great and it's had great previews, I'd look at EA and say, are you just doing this to make money? Are you doing this because Capcom took the risk on 2 and it did well? And now you're like, all right, we can do that too. If people are going to buy it, yeah, we can go back to the well. We can dig up some old stuff. And yeah, I am.
Or you're doing it because you have something to say, something interesting that you didn't get to do with it last time. Like, yeah,
if you're going to remake something, yeah, I prefer you mix it up. I prefer you change narratives. I prefer you change beats. I prefer you give me something I wouldn't expect.
Do you want that in Resident Evil 4?
I do. I think Resident Evil 4 fundamentally, as much as it is considered one of the greatest games of all time, there are sections that should be completely cut, and I hope are completely cut. There are sections that I want to see completely changed, and there are narrative beats in particular where they have interesting nuggets, but even Shinji Mikami himself has come out and said, we wrote that script really quick. We wrote that script incredibly fast, and I would love for somebody to come in and flesh it out because we didn't have time to. And so...
That's a bold take.
Yeah. And so it's true. The script sucks. I love Resident Evil 4, but the storytelling is absolutely nonsensical for the back half. And so if they can find a way to make that relevant, make it more powerful, because I love Resident Evil for its cheese, but they've also, in the last few, they've sprinkled in some legitimate drama that you can relate to those characters in a way you never have before. And that really elevates the performances and your investment in all of these characters. And so I would love to see Resident Evil 4 lean into that and build that up a little bit. But we'll see. Right now, I trust Capcom. Sure. I am a little sick that everyone's like, yeah, we can just remake everything and it'll sell. And hey, we know what we like. We know what's safe. We know what works. And so do they. And that's why they keep doing it. And as long as people keep buying it, it's not going to stop. But as long as you're willing to take some risks, do some new things, and put out something that I like, I'm okay. I'm okay with it. Rebekah, we got to talk about everyone's favorite topic in the gaming sphere, and that's frames. We got to talk about frames. We're in the current generation of consoles, and people are getting riled up about frames. Yet again, the eternal debate. We start Super Nintendo 60 FPS, then the PlayStation 1 comes out, downgrades gaming as a whole with 30 FPS.
How could you make gaming worse?
PlayStation, how could you? What have you done? And Nintendo 64, they followed suit with Mario 64 not being 60 FPS. What on earth? And back then, nobody cared. But now that we've been on the other side, we've experienced 60 FPS, those conversations have gotten a bit more heated. And we've had a couple games launched this week that have really stirred that pot and got the whole current generation capabilities in question. So this week we had Gotham Knights and we had a Plague Tale Requiem drop. These are both current gen only games, and neither one of them offers a 60 FPS performance mode on consoles. Gotham Knight, 30-ish FPS. Plague Tale Requiem, if you have 120 Hz display, gets 40 FPS. So I've seen criticisms, I've seen conspiracies, I've seen so many takes about, oh my God, does this mean the new consoles are capped out? Should we be okay with this? How dare developers put out games that are not 60 FPS or don't give me the option for 60 FPS? So let's start with the two recent examples. Do you think Gotham Knights and a Plague Tale Requiem are exceptions to this 60 FPS standard people are going for? Or is this something players should prepare themselves for as we move into current gen only games?
I think the problem is that there is a style of game that the specific demographic of people who are broadly interested in that style of game really want 60 FPS and all the other fancy visual things, right? Like it's kind of the big AAA looking or at least AA looking 3D action adventure kind of game, right? Like I'm not like somewhere roughly in that genre, like the big Venn diagram. And if you show that's like somewhat realistic looking and not super cartoony. And I feel like if you're in that Venn diagram somewhere and your game is not striving for 60 FPS, a lot of people are going to look at it and go, "Hey, what are you doing?" Uh, but if you have something that is like very stylized visually or is like a little simpler in terms of gameplay, people aren't blinking an eye at it. Like I mean, maybe a couple people will complain online when they see the number, but if you're hitting 30 FPS, but also the first category of games are harder to get to 60 FPS for various reasons. So it's a little weird. I am not talking about Ragnarok. I am not talking about Ragnarok at all, actually. Sorry, just clarifying that in the chat. I'm not talking about anything specific. I think it does fall into that style of game, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what FPS that is. I have no idea. It's probably good. Who knows? But yeah, like people have it comes down more to audience expectations than anything else. I think I don't think any game has to be anything. I think you can make a game at whatever frame per second you want if it works for what you're trying to do. But if you're at a point, if you're making something where the tech that you have or the ability to hit a certain number is causing a problem where people are playing and they're constantly looking over like, oh, it's doing this thing. What's going on? Why is it like this? Then you've distracted people from the thing that you're fundamentally trying to express or the thing that you're trying to do with it, and that's a problem. And there's always going to be different levels of people. Like, I mean, I'm the kind of person who usually doesn't notice, but there are games where I certainly do, because it's like so obvious or so distracting, where just something isn't quite running the way it looks like it was designed to, or it looks like it should. And yeah, so I don't think there's any clear answer to your question, right? Like, I think that I don't think all games need to be 60 FPS. I don't think that we're seeing a culture like a game cultural backslide where suddenly everything's going to be 30 FPS or lower.
Oh no,
I don't think that's happening. I just think that like some like Gotham Knights. I mean, I've seen my partner playing that, and I think that has a bunch of other things that possibly happened during its development that maybe weren't great, and maybe there was a time and place where it was going to be 60 FPS and now it's not. So yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a complicated question. I think like temper people's expectations, and make sure that the game that you're making doesn't is going to match the scope of what you technologically can handle, I guess is what I would say. But I don't know. I hope we just have games that look nice in general and that run the way they're supposed to run regardless of what frame rate we can hit.
I think expectations are the biggest point of contention when we look at these recent examples. And again, I'm with you. I don't think this is going to be a universal thing where every game moving forward can't hit 60 FPS and you can't have a nice looking game that's 60 FPS on new machines. I think it's just that we've had a lot of cross-generation games. We've had a lot of games that have shipped at 60 FPS. Most games on current gen machines, PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, have been 60 FPS. And so that kind of has set this expectation with players that they'll at least have an option for it moving forward. And I think that's where some of this comes from. And I think if you are a developer and you are targeting, Plague Tale Requiem, I think is a really great example of a game that I still enjoy. It's 40 FPS. Lord help me. It's 40 FPS on Xbox Series X and S, and it still, to me, plays really well. And I think what makes that game exceptional is the visual quality, the amount of detail, the amount of density, the texture quality, the physics, the lighting, all of these details that are packed into every single scene. And if a developer just comes out and says, we are targeting that because this is what we think looks better, like that's what we think, that's how we want to ship this game, I think those conversations would be like, all right, players would know ahead of time, all right, this is what they're doing. This is what it means for the game. And then you can decide whether or not you want to dive in and check it out. Again, with Plague Tale Requiem, it's on Game Pass as well. So there's no financial hit. You're not being bamboozled for buying it and say, oh my God, this is only 40 FPS. But it is interesting as we look towards games like God of War Ragnarok, which has 4 or 5 graphics options, just a huge slate. So we had Saints Row just ship, and that had 4 or 5 graphics options as well. And I hope that kind of becomes the standard, so then players have the option to choose what is more important to them, if they want less fidelity but higher frames. But again, I think a lot of people oversimplify what that means for the development team on the console side, at least. Because it isn't as simple as, all right, why don't they just give us the PC sliders on the console version? They actually have to go through and test all of these different performance modes across the game. And
why don't they just flip the 60 FPS switch?
Yeah. What's up with what's up? Uncap the frame rate. Let me go wild. Let me get nuts with it. All right? And
it is really fun when people like uncap frame rate on frame lock games and things get real weird. Did you see, was it Tales of Symphonia recently that someone like uncapped the frame rate on one of the capped versions? And if you've ever seen Tales of Symphonia, it's just Lloyd and he's like running around and his like limbs are flailing around like noodles because the game doesn't know what to do with all of his animation.
Because people were like, why isn't this 60 FPS? What's going on? Why didn't they uncap? Yes, and I've talked to Jason Ronald of Xbox with FPS boost and the amount of stuff that they had to do for games like Dark Souls 3 to get that actually working at 60 FPS is just unreal. They had to go through section by section, and each biome had to be coded slightly differently to make sure things didn't fundamentally break. And so those are the kind of things that, from a technical standpoint, a lot of us don't get, and I think that's okay. We don't have to necessarily understand all of it. But I do kind of wish developers would just put a toggle in and say, all right, disclaimer, you can untoggle frame rate, you can uncap the frame rate here, but just know it's going to be just a mess, just so people can see what that really looks like. And I think
they would not pass console certification if they did that.
Yeah, that's true. People's hardware just exploding. Oops. But yeah, the frame conversations are interesting. Obviously, everyone has a preference. I don't think that's a problem. I don't think I personally, if I have the option, I will play a game at 60 FPS. If it's there, I'm going to put it on 60 FPS 100% of the time.
For sure.
One of my most anticipated games right now is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That game is not going to even be a consistent 30 FPS.
It sure won't.
It's going to be 720p, low texture quality in the 240p zone at 28 FPS. And you know what? I put 140 hours into Pokemon Sword and Shield. Yep. I put 100 hours into Arceus. even though they played not that great and didn't look that great. And so really it's going to come down to what you want from the experience. Plague Tale Requiem, they want you to play what a lot of people consider to be one of the best looking games ever made. That was their goal. And they committed to that, and that affected the frame rate. But I've been playing, like I said, I'm playing Dragon Ball The Breakers. That is one of the worst looking games I've played. It's a locked, rock solid 60 FPS, not a single frame drop. So yeah, I like having these conversations about the frame rate because we are in a new generation and expectations have shifted, but also a lot of us grew up playing games that were never 60 FPS. Many of our favorite games of all time were not 60 FPS. And I don't think frame rate inherently makes a game better. It makes a game perform better, but I don't think frame rate inherently makes a game better. And that's an important distinction because I see so many people look at games and say, this isn't 60, I'm not playing it. And it's a bummer because
sorry.
Oh no, I'm done.
You can take whatever you think a game's FPS should be at based on what you know of the game. I guarantee you the people who made that thing know it inside and out, and they know the reason why it is not up to where you want it to be. Maybe that reason is they could have done it, but money and corporations basically pushed them to push the game out before they were able to do the things necessary to make sure it could run at 60 FPS. And that isn't their fault. That's somebody else's fault. Maybe the reason is the hardware, which is kind of the thing people are all saying at the Switch. Like, oh, it just can't handle these games, running at higher frame rates. And maybe that's true. There's a lot of different reasons, but I guarantee you whatever made up reasons you have in your head for why something is running that way, it's probably a lot more complicated than that. And the devs are, if it's not running well, for whatever reason, the devs are probably going, oh God, we're sorry. We wanted to fix it.
We tried.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, if you only want to play stuff at 60 FPS, that's fine. You're absolutely entitled to do so. And again, our expectations have changed. And I think developers, there's going to be a period where people try. Because I think really what a lot of it comes down to when we look at stuff like Gotham Knights, when we look at stuff like a Plague Tale Requiem, is you have windows that you're trying to ship this game. You have targets, and there are probably conversations behind the scenes where you sit down with your publisher, you sit down with your team and say, we need to hit this target. We're aiming for this target. What do we need to prioritize? And that's probably why games like Plague Tale and Gotham Knights don't ship with options, because this was their priority at launch. That's not to say there won't be more options down the road, because I think realistically there probably will be for Gotham Knights and a Plague Tale. Plague Tale doesn't have FSR, and I think even just implementing FSR would increase performance quite a bit. But yeah, it is a lot more complicated. And again, you are entitled to buy or not buy, or play or not play, whatever you want. But it's just interesting to see the old frame rate conversations reemerge from the shadows, fiercer than ever before.
We're never done with the discourse in games. It's got to circle back around every single time.
Yeah,
you never learn anything.
Like I said, original Mario 60 FPS, and then the game was down. Super Mario 64, unplayable trash.
Unplayable trash. Worst game ever.
But all right, well that's enough FrameGate. That's enough FrameGate. We're going to talk quickly about Persona 5 landing on Xbox. We touched on this briefly, but it's been a big week for JRPG fans on Xbox. The Xbox platform has historically struggled in Japan. It's historically struggled to get big, noteworthy JRPG franchises consistently. Final Fantasy VII Remake has been a big point of drama and contention because that was supposed to be a one-year, quote, exclusive on PlayStation, and now, years later, there's no Xbox version announced. And Persona, another, like we touched on earlier, Persona 5, considered to be one of the best games, period, ever made, not on Xbox for a long time. It was announced recently that Persona is coming to Xbox. Mainline Persona games are coming to the Xbox platform for the very first time, with Persona 5 Royal being the first one, and this week it dropped. This game dropped this week. So, I want to have a little fun. I know you're a big JRPG fan. You're a big JRPG fan. Earlier you touched on, playing a lot on Xbox, playing less on PlayStation. So what other JRPG omissions does the Xbox platform have in your eyes that need to be addressed? What are your favorite franchises that you can't play on Xbox right now?
They really need to start getting cozy with Square Enix.
Yeah.
Like that, I mean, that's the huge one, right? Like that's the elephant in the room is like Square Enix is all but married to PlayStation right now. And a little, well,
And
PlayStation
Nintendo.
and
Nintendo gets
yeah.
a lot of exclusives.
Yeah, they do. They super do. And I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I think probably like have a couple of them made it over to Xbox? Like did we get Octopath Traveler on Xbox?
We got Octopath Traveler 1. And then they
Okay.
announced that Octopath Traveler 2 is coming to everything except for Xbox.
Yeah, it gets like the leavings. Like 10 years later, we'll get whatever it is on Xbox.
They'll throw you some scraps.
Yeah, but also not even then because we don't like Chrono Trigger is on basically everything now except. Well, I guess it's not. It's on PC, right? Like
it's on PC.
And then the old Final Fantasy collections are starting to drop on various things, but I don't think those are coming to Xbox either. So yeah, they just need to. Xbox needs to get cozy with Square Enix. I assume they've tried to acquire them. They've tried to acquire everybody else.
Phil's picking up the phone. Yo, what do you need? How much you want? Let's do this. And like, nah,
right.
No.
But yeah, just make friends. Just go make some friends with them. Like, what did you do to piss them off? Probably nothing. Probably Sony has just offered them lots of money to stick with them because they've got Final Fantasy 16. What is Xbox's answer to that? I don't know. They did acquire various studios making RPGs. Like Avowed is still coming sometime.
Yeah. On the Western front,
they're good.
They're stacked. The most stacked you can possibly be for Western RPGs.
And I wonder how when those start churning out here in however many years we start to see those games, like I wonder how that is going to, like, I mean, I don't know what the timeline is for these things. It's probably not that soon, but like, how does Avowed butt up against a Final Fantasy 16? Like, how do they fight each other? And I don't think there's really any contest because Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy, but does Avowed do okay against something like that? What other games does Xbox have that it can pull out of its pocket? And Phil's talked a lot about getting a Japanese studio under their wing at some point, and there's a lot of RPGs coming out of Japan generally, so I wonder if that's on his mind. But I don't know. It seems like they've kind of taken the tactic of, well, we're just gonna run with the different things we have and let people come to us.
Yeah, and I think that is important, is that they obviously they're doing what they can in the interim, because what I appreciate about Phil, what I've appreciated about their strategy is that as soon as it was announced that Persona was coming to Xbox, everybody was cheering and celebrating, and Phil was like, yeah, that's cool, but like we have work to do. Like that is cool, but we are not done in Japan. And I think that mentality is really going to help, because there was a period of time, as much as people disassociate Xbox with Japan, the original Xbox and early Xbox 360 leaned into Japanese developers and publishers heavily. And there were a lot of really cool, compelling exclusives, a lot of really cool partnerships. And then that dwindled away. And I think when that dwindled away, they just lost a lot of relationships. And so when you have people like Sarah Bond come out on stage and talk about how Square Enix is a partner during their most recent showcase, and you're like, yeah, I mean, technically, sure. Technically, they are. So that makes me feel like they have to be having the conversations behind the scenes. I've heard from individuals as well. Again, I can't substantiate this, that they have account managers dedicated to Square Enix right now. They have people who are working every single day to build that relationship with Square, because I do agree. As much as people in the Xbox camp are like, well, Square doesn't care about Xbox fans or whatever the case might be. Xbox cares about Square. Xbox cares a lot about Square, and they are working on a way to figure out how to get those games, because there are a lot of really big franchises that aren't on Xbox. And if that is where the thing that a lot of people kind of downplay when we look at platform preference, if you have a franchise, it can just be one franchise. If you have one franchise that you love and you can only get on one machine, that could completely shift your entire habits as a player. Like, well, I'm already playing on this machine anyway, so I'm just going to buy this game and buy this game and buy this game. And that is very important, and Xbox totally understands that, and that's why they want as many people playing as many different types of game as possible. They can't just say, we don't have JRPGs, sorry, go to PlayStation, go to Nintendo. Like, that is not something that they can do and just I mean, they'll be fine in the grand scheme of things, but if they are trying to be the top dog, and you know they are, they're throwing money around like they're trying to be the top dog.
Yep.
I'm really curious to see if they can fix that relationship with Square and what that means for some of our favorite franchises. You know, I grew up playing Squaresoft specifically. So I have a soft spot for a lot of Squaresoft RPGs, and I would love to see those franchises continue on Xbox. But
Did Tokyo RPG Factory put its games on Xbox? Like I Am Setsuna.
what do they do?
I Am
Oh
Setsuna is
no,
the one that I remember.
I Am Setsuna is definitely not on Xbox.
Were any of their other? Sorry, I'm googling with my loud mechanical keyboard now. They had another one or like two others. Lost Sphere and Oninaki. Were either of those on Xbox?
Lost Sphere? I don't.
No, these were not. None of these were on Xbox. What? Why were none of these on Xbox? This is see that where I'm going with this is Square's the big one, but if they can't get Square, like there's all these other Square Enix like expatriates running around, making RPGs like that. I don't know what Tokyo RPG Factory is working on now. I know people weren't super high on those three games. I loved it. I Am Setsuna though. But I don't know. I feel like there's smaller acquisitions that could be made or smaller partnerships to be made there.
And I think that is something I'm confident they're working on behind the scenes, because as we touched on, Square is the big example. Square is the biggest example, but they're up until recently we didn't have Ni no Kuni from level 5.
Oh yeah.
In a lot of cases, level
5 is a whole complicated.
Yeah, yes, that is a whole complicated situation, but for a while they had no interest, seemingly, to do anything with Xbox. All of their games, or I should say none of their games, are coming to Xbox. So there are a lot of smaller publishers, Japanese focused, that haven't worked with Xbox as well. So it's definitely not just Square being evil. I'm sure a lot of it really is Square getting big bags of money from PlayStation to just say, hey, your games already sell better here, dude. So why don't we sweeten that pot? Because imagine,
and it makes sense. Like if it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like it's not accusing Sony of bribing Square. No, it's not. And from the chat, no, that's how this business works. Like you pay money for things and then you get things. Like that's how it works. And Square Enix, when all of your audience is already on Sony and Nintendo platforms, and you don't have a built-in audience on Xbox, you don't really, like, Xbox has to come to you with a pretty strong pitch to say, hey, we think we could get you an audience here for X, Y, and Z reasons. Here's why you should go through the effort and the time and the energy to come to us. Like both parties have to do a little bit of work here. And if you're already pretty happy with the deal you're getting, why bother?
And it's like for the people who only play on Xbox. Like I have a PlayStation, I have a Switch. And I know there are people who only have one console. And again, it's expensive. Gaming is expensive. So I don't expect every single person to be like, well, I want to play this game. I guess I'll just go pay $700 or whatever to buy a PlayStation 5 and a game and a year of PlayStation Plus. Like, that's a big ask. But like you touch on, Sony's an established brand. They're an established company that's been around for a while. They also have been in business, in sales for a long time as well. And so
big in Japan specifically.
So it's easier and cheaper. I'm not saying it's something I support and something I'm stoked about, but I guarantee you it's easier and cheaper for Sony to get exclusive partnerships with somebody like Square than it is for Xbox. Because Xbox needs to come to the table with a compelling offer, a bunch of money, and they need to prove to them that it's worth it. Like, are we going to get growth here? What's this going to mean for the future? And it's just a lot of work and energy from Xbox. And
yeah, I think it's complicated too, because if you don't already have that built-in audience in Japan, like a Japanese studio is looking at working with you on something like an exclusive or something like that, and basically looking at that and thinking, oh, I'm going to reduce the audience for this next game if I make my game Xbox exclusive, right? Because all my fans are already on PlayStation or Switch. They're not going to pay $200, $300, $400, $500 for a console plus this game. My numbers would go down, and then the shareholders would be mad at me. So then
it's this delicate balance where how much money is Xbox expected to pay? Because we know Xbox has a lot of money. They're actively trying to spend $70 billion on Activision, so they have money. But is it going to be worth it? Are they going to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to get this game on the platform and then not have that game perform exceptionally well time and time again? And I think the hard reality is that's what they're going to have to do.
Yeah.
to build that moment. They're just going to have to eat it for a while if they truly want that momentum, because as you touched on, Japan is so established, and these partnerships and these relationships are so established that for a figure like Xbox to really be in that in circle, it's going to take work. It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. And if you can build those relationships and establish yourself, it will lead to long-term success in the region. It's a lot of work for Xbox, and they're putting in the work. So I commend the hell out of them, because it seems like from the messaging we're getting from Phil and the money we're seeing them invest into Japan, and the growth that they're seeing in terms of console sales in Japan, they're putting in the work. It might not happen as fast as a lot of us want it to, but I think there's a world where a couple of years from now we have way less exceptions when it comes to Japanese published titles. And
I think so too.
Who knows? As long if Square isn't gobbled up by someone, maybe all of their stuff is just multi-platform across the board. But yeah, that whole situation, it's complicated, but it's interesting to talk about, because Xbox does want to get in Japan bad. They really, really do.
They do.
Will they? Stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, we got to talk about the Silent Hill extravaganza that happened this week, because we've been sitting on years and years of rumors and speculation. We've had folks talk about the Kojima Silent Hill game for years and how that's going to be revealed at the next PlayStation showcase. And we've been hearing that for years and years. And then we've had people come out and say, oh, actually, there's like 4 Silent Hill games in development. And people are like, what? They're not doing 4 different Silent Hill games. What on earth are you talking about? And then we had a showcase, or it was announced this week that Konami is doing a Silent Hill transmission designed to update fans on the future of the franchise. And then the metadata started coming out, and you're like, this thing's 40 minutes long.
That was so funny.
Like, I wasn't expecting 40 minutes. And then they unveiled the showcase, and they announced 4 Silent Hill games and a Silent Hill movie. So Konami goes from a decade of absolutely nothing at all in the Silent Hill camp, to just saying, boom, we are going all in on Silent Hill. Here you go. We've heard you. We've seen your Reddit posts. We've seen how much you've been harassing people online about Silent Hill. Here you go. Here's something for everyone. So the big one was Silent Hill 2. The remake, the long-rumored remake of Silent Hill 2 was officially confirmed, and that's how they opened the show. And it was announced that it was officially confirmed that Bloober Team is handling the remake of Silent Hill 2. So this announcement was met with some skepticism. There's been a lot of people who aren't super stoked on Bloober Team. I will say that I have enjoyed several Bloober Team games. Not all. They haven't been super consistent across the board. They've had their problems, but I was, interested in this. And ahead of all of this, I was deep. I'm a big Silent Hill fan. I was down the rabbit hole. So late 2020, early 2021, I'm behind the scenes, cobbling all these things together, digging, rooting around in the muck, rooting around in the filth, trying to figure out what's going on with Silent Hill. And there was a lot of interesting things that pointed to Bloober Team doing Silent Hill. I did an interview with that team, and they were talking about working with Akira for the medium. And then they dropped this line about how Akira said he would work on anything with us. I was like, all right, that's weird. And then Akira comes out like a week later and says, oh yeah, the next project that what's going to be real is the one you want to hear about. And there was just all of these things that led to me believing that Bloober Team was working on Silent Hill. And then we started getting official reports and confirmation, or I shouldn't say confirmation, but official reports stating that, yeah, this could be a definite reality. And now it's out. So I have to ask, what are your thoughts on Bloober Team handling a remake of what is considered to be the best horror game of all time?
Better them than whatever Konami's got going on internally.
I wholeheartedly agree.
No offense to people who work at Konami. Konami seems to have, the Kojima thing aside, Konami internally seems to have turned its focuses to making gambling machines and amusements over the last several years based on its earnings. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of high-profile game development work going on in there anymore. There's some. I'm not like trying to discount. I'm not trying to say they've shut down their game development studios or anything, but like Konami internally doesn't really seem to be interested in this kind of thing. And this whole presentation, honestly, like look, at least they figured out that they have a big IP that is a big moneymaker for them that people really like and would like to see more of. And they have said, well, we don't want to do this. And we had a falling out with the one guy who everybody trusted to do this. So I guess let's get a bunch of other people involved. And Bloober Team, I could take or leave. I mean, I heard the things people didn't like about the medium and, fair play, but I think they'll probably do fine. I don't think it'll be heinous. It might be good. But we have the Annapurna no code thing though. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting partnership. So that'll be good. And then the visual, was it like a manga dude doing the other one?
Silent Hill F.
Yeah, like that's dope. I was looking up some of that work. I don't know who any of these people are. I know
when I watched that trailer and they had the names at the beginning, like from this person and from this person, I was like
Googling.
Am I supposed to know these people? But yes, they are well respected and renowned in the space, and there is some energy I think around Silent Hill F in particular because it's a cool ass setting, 1600s Japan for a horror game.
Yeah, and those visuals, the flowers and the freak face at the end.
Silent Hill needs to be weird. And that's when I saw that trailer, I'm like, yeah, this is weird. I'm ready for this.
Sorry, I've diverted you from the Silent Hill 2 remake. I think it will be fine at worst. Like, I think it might even be good. I don't know. Bloober Team, I don't think is a horrible choice.
Again, like, I know it's controversial, and I've talked about this in the past, but Bloober Team, regardless of how you felt about their overall quality, I think it's hard to deny that they've shown a lot of promise, especially when we look at the medium and the atmosphere and some of the ideas that they had in terms of gameplay. They've had really great ideas. They've just been an independent horror developer, independently publishing their own games. So I know for a fact their budgets have not been big. They haven't really had that opportunity to get a big, high-profile project and really get some backing behind it. And I'm hoping that this is that for them. And this shows that with the proper resources and funding, this team can deliver something great. And I'm hopeful it is great. I mean, because Silent Hill 2 is just one of my favorite games of all time. So we had our skepticism surrounding remakes, that conversation earlier. I'm not going to be easy on Bloober Team if they fumble.
No.
Fumble one of my favorite, I would say it's the most important horror game ever made. It completely defined the genre. It's completely subvert any expectations of what horror could be in video gaming. If they fumble that, whoo! Yeah.
Maybe don't give them any more big franchises.
Again, it's rough to say, maybe a little unfair to say, but this is really a make or break moment for them because a lot of people are very skeptical of Bloober Team. And if they don't nail it with this, I don't think I think a lot of their bigger opportunities moving forward are going to be diminished quite a bit. Even though we know Bloober Team and Konami have that strategic partnership.
Yeah.
Remember that whole announcement where they just said, we're working on stuff with them. And people were like, oh yeah, well, you're definitely working on Silent Hill. I don't know what else you'd be working on. Like a horror-focused developer.
It's always fun when they try to pretend that, it's just a business relationship. And it's like, you have announced the thing that we all want you to announce. Like, clearly. You're just being weird about it for no reason.
So, we kind of talked about all the stuff shown here. How are you feeling about Konami's strategy with announcing 4 Silent Hill games simultaneously?
It's like 3 games and a...
3 games and like a
3
half...
3 games and a baby. 3 games and a...
3 games and a half game, half movie, web-based...
Twitch chat thing. I mean, I'm being silly about it. Again, the names behind that are good, right?
Yeah, J.J. Abrams put out a statement. I'm like, what the
Bad Robot Games folks are doing that. And then the other folks involved are like companies that are known for making interactive, like
the Dead by Daylight people are working.
Oh yeah, Dead by Daylight team. Behavior is on there, right? Yeah, I'd forgotten about that too. So it's like a really interesting collaboration of people, and of all of them, that one seems maybe the closest to being done, right? Because they said live in 2023. I don't remember if there's
nothing else got date. Nothing else got a single year.
Yeah, so it seems like that's kind of going to be there to tide us over while the other ones are baking. I think it's an interesting idea. The whole thing was like, oh, it's like the feeling of watching horror movies in a theater with a bunch of other people and all screaming together. Like that's what we're trying to do. Not a horrible pitch, honestly. Let's see where it goes.
No, I just went and watched Terrifier 2 in theaters, and that was such a hilarious experience because that movie is just so grisly and disgusting and over the top, and you're watching some of the most horrendous things you've ever seen in any movie, and then you're looking over and seeing everyone else's reactions to this just
Yeah.
nonsense, and that's fun. That's if they can
Yeah.
manage a way to bring that to more people and we can do it from home, I'm there for it. I'll check it out. I'll see what it is.
I will be curious to see how well that community is moderated.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Lord only knows.
Because that could go south real quick, depending on what is going on Twitch that day.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. So interesting idea. Execution is always the toughest part.
Yes.
A lot of good ideas floating around that don't land in a way that anyone is excited about, or land in a way that gets absolutely destroyed by the community.
Yeah. Am again, not a horror person, don't know Silent Hill super well. Am I like totally off base when I saw Silent Hill F? I thought, does that mean Silent Hill 5? Like 5 is spelled with an F, so is that what that is?
I honestly don't have any clue. The lowercase f to me, I don't
And the
know.
fact that it was like a very like cinematic trailer, like we didn't see any gameplay, so it was like, oh, it felt like it could be this is the next numbered entry in the Silent Hill franchise, and we have only this very early sneak peek, and we're working with all these famous people. But I don't know. Like I'm asking that question because I don't.
Based on
It's a weird thing to name your game if it's not Silent Hill 5. If 5 is the next number.
Yeah, it's from what I read after the fact, it seems like this is a spin-off. From what I've gleaned from this is like a weird experiment in the Silent Hill universe, but not related to like a current timeline or not. So from what I understand, this is not a mainline entry.
Okay.
The rumor is that we're not done with Silent Hill announcements.
Wait, how many Silent Hills are there? Did I just like make up a random number?
3 was the last. Actually, there was a 4. Silent Hill 4,
Okay,
the room.
Okay, right. Okay, so I suddenly realized that I might be mixing it up with Resident Evil, but that wouldn't make any sense because we were talking about Resident Evil 4 earlier. No, but this makes sense. Like it would be either 4 or 5 if there was a new number.
And some other people in the chat are saying, yeah, I thought it was stood for 5 as well. Like they aren't really positioning it as a mainline entry based on the kind of PR words that they're using to describe.
Just be teasing.
That's true. Following PT and the playable teaser, everyone has these wild expectations for conspiracies. We've even seen the Annapurna team lean into that with Townfall. They have that cryptic image floating around that people are like, oh, there's got to be codes in here. There's got to be. And I'm sure there's something in there to play around with.
Oh, yeah.
When
Annapurna will go ham with that.
Yes. That's a team I trust with narrative. That is a team that I know is going to do some wild, weird things with narrative.
And no code, yeah.
I am kind of concerned about Konami doing 4 games at once.
They're not doing anything. They're outsourcing it.
Yeah, but that makes
They're not even publishing the Annapurna one because Annapurna's a publisher. They're publishing it. No Code's developing it. So, and then the live experience. Like, I think it's fine because the live experience again they've like outsourced it to like 50 different studios.
That's true.
Yeah, Konami's just sitting there and kind of checking off boxes like, yeah, sure, here you go.
Yeah, because I'm sure they have had developers lined up around the block for Silent Hill and Castlevania. I'm sure the number 100%. Of pitches they've gotten for Metal Gear Solid, Castlevania, Silent Hill, they probably have developers just on call. Just as soon as you approve this budget, we're making this game. And so some of those previous reports talked about Castlevania, Metal Gear Solid being in the conversations as well, and seeing Konami really say, all right, you guys want Silent Hill, here you go. And like you said, they're involved technically. They're involved on a technical level, but they are really just green lighting these and saying you can use them is what this feels like. We're not going to give you that much money is kind of the impression I get from this strategy, partnering with all of these different publishers. Like, we'll give you the rights to spend money on Silent Hill. Like, if you want to, sure. We'll sit back, we'll collect that check. But outside of Silent Hill 2, they feel very disconnected from any sort of financial responsibility. So if it bombs, hey, that ain't us. We didn't lose that money. And
They'll
so
just slap the name Silent Hill on a couple more casino machines. And
that sounds like the Konami that we all know.
that's the Konami way.
So I'm hopeful. Again, as a big fan of Silent Hill, I would just love to live in a world where that franchise exists in a way that isn't upsetting, exists in a way that, gets some kind of budget. And it seems like for now, there's hope. There's more hope than we've had in the last decade.
At least one of those games has to be good, right?
Law of averages. One of them has to hit.
Yeah, I think most of them or all of them will. But at least one of them has to.
At least one, please. One of them has to. All right, I'm going to get to a couple super chats real quick. We got Assassin, who says, unfortunately, Miles, I think Xbox should just give up on Square Enix and just get close to another publisher with JRPGs under their belt, like Bandai.
Bandai doing a whole lot of RPG? They got some.
They got Tales. They got Scarlet Nexus. They're
more action. I guess most RPGs are more action RPG now, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, that's not a horrible pitch because Rise was.
That, in my opinion, that was the best JRPG of the last several years, especially on the action
Rise
front.
on Xbox. Did they have some sort of Game Pass deal with that?
So I will say that Xbox has been leaning into Bandai for marketing, especially. Scarlet Nexus was in Game Pass. We've seen a lot of Bandai games featured at Xbox shows. So it's safe to say that Xbox agrees in a lot of ways. While they try to figure out the Square Enix situation, they are leaning into people like Bandai. Because we don't see a lot of Bandai games skip Xbox.
Right. Yeah, they've been... Yeah. Yeah, that's not a horrible idea. I mean, I guess they got Bandai already.
And a lot of people kind of forget how big Bandai is in terms of its value. They're rated pretty high. Their overall value is higher than Capcom by a fair amount. So Bandai does well. Bandai makes money, and it is a smart move to associate your... Especially with... Bandai has a lot of the anime games. A lot of the biggest anime, like Dragon Ball. That's Bandai every time.
Yeah, and I think maybe for that reason, and also because of their relationship with Nintendo for certain things, I think we're unlikely to see that get acquired anytime soon. But yeah, I guess that exists.
Yeah, that's an option.
Nick, I liked Rise.
Yeah, I thought outside of the last 3 hours,
that was a little weird, wasn't it? just cruising straight into.
I was working on our review for it. I wanted so badly to mash A through that dialogue. Let me tell you. The exposition dump at the end of that game is miserable. It goes from
so well.
It was so well paced, and then
maybe we're gonna have like almost kind of a nuanced conversation about like prejudice and bigotry in a mainstream video game, maybe, and then
Psych!
Go to space.
And then, oh no, Sephiroth 2.0 is in the mix. Oh, Again, so mostly really liked the game, mostly really liked the pacing, but that back end. Nick W says Resident Evil 4 is one of the greatest games ever made. Can't wait for the remake. I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you. All right, big topic again on the Xbox camp, and I'm excited to get your takes on this because I'm immersed in the Xbox ecosystem. I work for Windows Central, so I am forced to talk about the Xbox ecosystem constantly, whether I want to or not. And the biggest ongoing story in gaming, I think, overall right now is the ongoing acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, ABK.
Oh, it's exhausting, isn't it?
And it just keeps going. And it went from this thing that was happening behind the scenes, and we were all anticipating when it might close, to just this open. Everything's in the air. How we feel about our competition is there. PlayStation is making comments. Xbox is countering to the comments. The CMA is getting involved. All these regulatory bodies are getting involved. And we're getting, on one hand, I appreciate it because we're getting juicy comments that we would never, ever, ever get otherwise.
That's fun.
Like, I love hearing Xbox say, and basically no short terms, we're the worst of everyone right now. Like, we're doing the worst. And they would never say that otherwise.
No!
No, they would never say, we're in third place, PlayStation is dominating us, and that's the messaging they have to say. And then you
So
have
funny.
PlayStation come out and basically say, dude, Game Pass is scary. Game Pass is like something that we're really genuinely concerned about. We don't want Xbox taking games and putting them in Game Pass because we're scared of how that's going to impact our business. And then you have PlayStation, the market leader, essentially coming out and saying, we're worried that we can't compete in the space if this happens. So you have these things that they would never, ever say otherwise. So I love that. Love
All
that.
these corporations going, poor, woe is me, little old me.
We're
Can't
just
do business with these monopolies around.
yeah, you have PlayStation. Oh no, I can't do it. And then you have Xbox like, we're the underdog, guys. You know,
Little baby.
we're the little scrappy underdog, just trying to get our foot in the door, just sitting on billions of dollars. Because then you have, you have Xbox say things like, yeah, you know, we're in third place, we're trying to compete, and then you have them attempt to spend $70 billion. When you have PlayStation and Nintendo, who I don't think could even do that. Even if Xbox just stood by and wasn't going to get involved, I don't think PlayStation and Nintendo are going to say, here you go, Activision, here's $70 billion that we have just floating around.
I think Sony could.
I think they could.
I do not think they would.
I think if they really did some digging, yeah, they probably could pool together $70 billion.
Oh, no, Sony could. I mean, because Sony's in the same boat as Microsoft in that they've got their hands in a bunch of other pots. Theirs just happened to be like selling what are the kids using these days? CD players?
Compact disc machines.
No, but I mean, they've got this whole
The
electronic...
Walkman's still kicking, right?
I mean, look, every 3 months I go look at Sony's earnings report to see if there's anything about gaming in there, and it's this tiny, pathetic little subsection of their overall earnings report. And Microsoft is the exact same way. It's this little footnote on a single slide. It's like literally nothing. So yeah, I'm sure they have the capital if they wanted, but Sony is a broader, giant entertainment technology company. Does not seem even as interested in gaming as Microsoft as a broader technology company is. And I like they seem to just kind of be content to let it do its thing, even though on its own PlayStation is this gigantic brand. So yeah, I can't imagine them deciding to spend money to scoop up a bunch of expensive studios in the same way that Microsoft has been willing to let the gaming brand flourish. And I think you can see some of the history of how that came about when you look back at the conversations between Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see Satya be a voice for the gaming side.
Yeah,
because we know the origins of Xbox, and it was just this weird bastard child where a bunch of loud, annoying people at Xbox were like, "Let's do gaming," and Bill Gates is like, "What are you talking about? We're an office company. We're an office company. We always have been. We always will be. Get out of here with your Xbox." And then they just eventually did it, and it's managed to work okay. And now
there's this beautiful corporate poetry that happened where there's like some article from like 6 or 7 years ago where Phil Spencer was talking about having a phone call with Nadella and being like telling him, if we're going to do gaming, if you're going to make me the head of gaming, then we have to go all in on it. And then like just this last year, there was a release from Nadella where he has a line where he says, "We're going all in on gaming." And I'm like, okay, there we go.
Coming full, sir. It's beautiful.
It's lovely.
Yeah, and so again, I get excited about the possibilities of a company like Microsoft with all of that money actually going all in on gaming because of what it means for the future. But before we talk about the latest developments with the CMA, because really what the big news this week is that the CMA is turning to the public's opinions on the Activision Blizzard King acquisition. But before we talk about that, what do you think this deal means for the industry? And how likely do you think it is that it's going to actually close?
Lofty question.
It's a big one.
I think it'll close. I think we'll get there. It might be delayed longer than people think it will be. I do think not to get delved too deeply into politics, but it does seem like the Biden administration in general is being a little bit actually considerably harder than we had previously on these big acquisitions, especially in tech. I do think that's a good thing generally. I think we should be harder on these kinds of acquisitions across all of tech, across all of everything, to prevent exactly the kind of thing that these examinations are meant to prevent, right? Like we don't want monopolies controlling various segments of our industries. So it's a good thing. And I think this deserves the scrutiny it's getting. I do think it will go through. I think Microsoft has done a lot of I I think probably for them necessary work, but sometimes feels unnecessary work. They've done a lot of outreach to media, trying to sort of get media on their side. Just as someone who has a little bit of inside baseball on this, they've been doing a lot of like outreach to press to try to be like, hey, let us explain this deal to you so that you understand why we are in the right here. And I'm like,
I'm
you
not
don't need.
I'm
I
not a
already am
regulatory body really.
right. Well, but that's part of it, right? Because for every article that a respected media outlet writes about this that seems to be like positive or explaining these things, they can then take that to a legal body and say, "Look, the media has said. Take a look at this evidence, these sources, these articles from journalists." So it's a little bit of 3D chess there. But also, I'm looking at these conversations like you don't really need to convince me. Like I think this is probably fine. I'm not usually a big fan of industry consolidation. I think in this very specific case where it's Microsoft picking up a company that's got some weird dirt, and even before all the crap came out about how horribly they've been treating their workers, especially the women at Activision Blizzard. As a big Blizzard fan, they've been in an extremely strange position where Activision has like been kind of consolidated down to literally nothing but Call of Duty, and all of their other stuff has gotten pushed to the side. And then we've got Blizzard over here where like World of Warcraft is kind of searching for its direction, doesn't really know what's going on. StarCraft is basically dead. Diablo will probably be fine whenever, that comes out. And then Hearthstone is just sort of sustaining itself somehow, and Heroes of the Storm is good. So Blizzard's like in a weird place right now where they're kind of like trying to figure out their identity, and they haven't really had any. Oh, and then Overwatch is doing Overwatch things. They don't really have anything new. So this is a very weird place as a company, and so I think it's probably a good thing. I think Microsoft with sort of the money behind it, where they don't have to every single year go, well, I guess we have to put all the money into Call of Duty again because that's how we're sustaining ourselves as a company. They might actually be able to do some inventive things with some new IP. I think the deal's a good idea. It should happen. I don't remember what your other question is. I just got to talking because this stuff exhausts me.
Yeah, it's again, I'm generally in the same boat. I think when I look at what this deal means for the people of Activision, I see a lot of positive change. I've talked to current employees of Blizzard about how they feel because I am very curious to see if there are concerns, because that is a thing that happens often with acquisitions. Is there's the worry of layoffs and what that means for you as an employee once somebody else comes in. And it seems like a lot of people within Blizzard right now are very optimistic about what this means for their future and what this means for the culture of the company. Yeah. And as long as Microsoft gets in there, is hands-on, and does make meaningful, sweeping changes, I think that will be a net positive for everyone who works at Activision. Because, like you said, Activision, Call of Duty machine. All of these teams, all of this talent is designed to perpetuate Call of Duty and chug that along. And then, Lord forbid, there's a Call of Duty that comes out and doesn't hit. It isn't what it needs to be. Your business has no backup. And those people... yeah. Huge drop. Huge revenue hits because your Call of Duty machine went off the rails a little bit. Yep. And so you have to spend all this money and time and resources to get it back on the track and hope that moves. And there's no guarantee for any IP anymore. No IP, no single IP is invincible in this day and age. And we've seen that, I mean, on the Xbox side with Halo. Not to say that Halo was a flop, not to say that Halo isn't making money, but Halo isn't
what they thought it would be.
It wasn't a guaranteed success as they thought it was going to be. Just we put out Halo, people will be there. To some degree, that is true. And with Call of Duty, I don't think it'll ever go away. But I am so tired of that machine dictating everything about that publisher who has this huge pool of IP and has all of these talented teams that are just relocated to Call of Duty for eternity. Call of Duty forever, as long as they're working there. So I do agree that there is a high likelihood that this deal goes through, and I do agree that these things should be looked at under a microscope. And again, when we look about what this means for us, if you're in the Xbox camp, you're like, well, sick, I just want this stuff on Game Pass, so that's why I want this deal to go through. And that's fine. I think that's totally fair. I'm stoked about it. I don't ever have to buy Blizzard games or Call of Duty. Maybe we'll see how that all plays out ever again. It's just in the service. And from that perspective, sure, cool. But that being said, I don't want it to be a 2-month process when somebody says, we're going to spend $70 billion on this. And people are like, all right, whatever. Cool, do it. Yep. There should be some level of scrutiny. And because we've never had a deal like this, I think that's why there is so much scrutiny. a lot of these
Yes.
bodies like the CMA, and not to discredit the people who work there, but I just don't think they know what to look for or what the concerns are, because
Right.
they haven't had to confront those concerns before. And
Yeah,
so
and if you have watched if you watched any part of the Epic Apple trial, you probably have an idea of how little various government and court officials know about how video games work. If you want a goldmine of weird questions and answers, boy, what a ride that was.
yeah, and again, I'm going to say this word and I don't mean it as an insult. It shouldn't be an insult, but a lot of these folks are just kind of ignorant to the reality of what this deal could potentially mean, and how the industry currently operates. And so this is going to be a learning experience, and that's why we see Microsoft paying the big bucks, getting some of the biggest and best lawyers in the business involved to detail exactly why this is a good thing. We're the good guys. You should be excited about this. This isn't going to hurt competition. Blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of stuff that they need to say and have to say to get this deal to go through. And considering the fact that they're going to lose billions of dollars if it doesn't go through, they're going to. They're going to say and do what they need to do to make this deal go through. So the CMA has been the most vocal, I think. They've been the most critical and skeptical so far of all of the big bodies. It's also come out recently that they are making Facebook sell Giphy. So the CMA in particular is looking at American tech and with a lot of skepticism. And they are really trying to push back on what big tech in America can do. And I think that's fine. That's totally fine.
As we watch people like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk just run roughshod all over things that have become ubiquitous in American society. Yeah, I would like some scrutiny. Yes, please. Thank you.
I love Twitter, but I'm so worried about Twitter. Anyway, CMA has announced that they are going to the public. They have a email. You can send an email to the CMA, and they are going to be looking at what the public is saying regarding this deal, and they're going to use what the public is saying as part of their closing statements for their ruling in this massive case. So to the CMA folks who have to sift through social media, who have to go on Twitter, who have to go on YouTube, God bless your soul. You are a hero, and I wish you the absolute best. And I hope that the CMA will be paying for your therapy post this deal. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about the CMA going public facing and just opening a hotline to anyone and everyone regarding this deal?
It seems normal,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to big tech deals, so I don't know how often this happens, but I know that opening things up for public comment is something that various regulatory and government bodies do all the dang nabbity time.
All the daggum time.
For all sorts of reasons. It's a really normal thing. I believe they did it during the Epic Apple deal, which was also extremely fun. Or Epic Apple lawsuit, which was also very fun. They're always opening things up for comment. This is a normal thing. I wonder personally how useful it is. Like, I don't actually know. I'm not behind the scenes in a way where I know how much of that they use. I imagine, due to the nature of the internet and everything, a lot of it is just spam, people being stupid. A lot of it is useless. A lot of it is uninformed. Uh, yeah, I wonder. I truly wonder how they are able to discern. Sometimes it's obvious, but I wonder how people who do not understand video games fully sometimes are able to discern the difference between somebody being a troll and somebody an informed citizen who has like a thought or a concern that they want to express in the situation. I don't know.
That is a really interesting point, because what is determined to be useful information and what is just filtered off to the side, especially if you are opening the floodgates in that way? How do you even manage to discern any of that? And so
Yeah.
it will be interesting to see how it gets used, what ends up getting used. But ultimately, this deal, the reason these regulatory bodies exist is to protect the public. From a fundamental level, they are trying to protect competition so that these businesses don't have free reign to negatively impact customers. And it makes sense to go to the public then and ask them, all right, well, what do you think? Is this going to be bad for you? I don't think fundamentally that's a problem. I just think in the gaming space, especially when we have, the tribal console war mentality, that they're going to get a lot of constructive feedback on the deal.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'll get some.
I'm sure they'll get some.
Good luck finding it.
Yes, exactly. I hope the constructive feedback isn't lost in the void of Xbox bad spam comments that they're going to get on that email address.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super chat from Assassin, who says, PlayStation fanboys, oh, this is quotes, Xbox needs to compete. They're in last place. They need to do better. Microsoft uses those very same arguments against Sony and their fans. Sony and fanboys. Surprised Pikachu face. Yeah, I mean, again, Sony knows that they're being hypocritical when they're making these comments. They built their entire business around exclusives, but they don't want this deal to go through because of the implications for the business. So, like Xbox, they have to suck it up, sound weak, sound like they can't compete, sound like there's no world where PlayStation can survive post this deal because it doesn't help their business.
They got to do a marketing.
Yeah, they gotta appeal to pull on your heartstrings, make you say, no, I've loved PlayStation for decades. They can't go away. No. We can't let little PlayStation get damaged by big mean Xbox and Microsoft.
You're telling me Phil Spencer literally wants to murder a PlayStation 5? Oh my god.
Oh my god. So yeah, it's the noise, like with most things, kind of diminishes a lot of the actual constructive conversation about what this means if more deals on this caliber continue to happen, and what happens when Microsoft gets into a position where they aren't third place anymore. They are number one, and they own X, Y, Z. They have Game Pass, and nobody in the world can compete with Game Pass, and blah, blah, blah. Those kind of things are interesting, and those are legitimate concerns to bring up. Are they legal grounds for this one deal not going through? Probably not, but that's where we are. And with that, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Reb, thanks so much for hanging out. One more time for all the amazing people. Where can they get a hold of you?
Thank you so much for having me. You can find me on Twitter at Duck Valentine. You can find my writing at ign.com/person/Duck Valentine. Yes, okay. I've almost got it memorized. /person/Duck Valentine. Yes, that's what it is.
Oh, that person thing absolutely cracks me up.
Here's a tease. If you like weird niche legal nonsense, like weird stories about weird legal stuff, I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, I have a piece going up this week about that. Should be a weirdo story if you just like that kind of thing.
I mean, we're all invested in the weird legal drama right now. That's the hot topic. So let's go. Let's get it.
Yeah. Hopefully this week, if not the following week.
Little tease, something to look forward to. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone who tuned in, and we will be back next week. Have an awesome weekend.